What?
That one song, I like it slow. Make
Yo,
it.
I look. You ain't that old. I can't recognize the song. Maybe you just a bad singer.
I am a bad singer. Don't judge
Oh,
me.
no,
Look, I used to
yeah.
sing. I used to sing really good. I used to be in a church choir and everything.
Word.
Them days are done. Uh-huh. Them days are done and dead and over with.
Shit. Grand Rising, everybody. Welcome back to Point of View. We just chilling right now. Hope you are good where you are in your neck of the woods. I'm going to show an episode from COINTELPRO. Well, that has to do with COINTELPRO like behaviors from the 2020 movement of BLM and how there were people that were hired by the FBI as informants to infiltrate movements such as in Denver and get activists in trouble basically. So we'll get into that in a second. How you doing today, So?
I'm
Uh,
doing well. How are you?
you know what? Better not have been in a long time.
Amen. Sound good. You're glowing.
Uh, you think so?
Yes, you're glowing. So silly. Look, y'all, I'm giving him the big head. My fault.
I'm feeling all right though. I'm not gonna lie. It's winter time, so it's always a little over this way. But um, I got my Black History Month shirt on. I did my hair for once, so it is what it is. We keep it moving, and yeah, I'm feeling good today.
Who wants to do my hair for free?
Look, I did my hair for free.
I don't want to do my own head. I want
Look,
somebody else to pamper me.
I ain't got the money for somebody else to be
Me,
sick.
me too. Me
It's
too.
not even about that either. It's the patience.
Right.
Don't nobody know my hair but like me.
Facts.
And sometimes I want to have to sit there and explain, like, well, this goes this way, and I like this like that. Like, um, not that I don't mind going and letting somebody else take care of this, you know. Um,
Well, I'm thinking about cutting all of mine off. Forget it. And if you know me,
why are you trying
my
to do
hair's,
that?
I don't know, I'm just sick of it. I want my curls, so the only way I could probably get the natural curls back is chopping some of it off.
Hmm,
Get rid of all the dead ends.
you got a point. You got a point. Um, I want to. So we had my cousin hit me up the other day, and we got to talking. Sorry, don't nobody know who my cousin is. Love Parked Her is an artist that I worked with a certain Mitchell Saint on a couple of my songs, and we got to talking, and I was like, yo, like I'm looking for something. I need another feature. Like, send me some. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and she sent me something, and I wasn't even planning on putting another song on this deluxe version album, but I was like, let me go ahead and just throw this on here. I'm really excited about this. It's gonna drop um tonight because I set it to just drop ASAP. So it should drop sometime tonight. But I'm gonna go ahead and play this real quick before we go and get into um what we actually want to talk about tonight. Just to kick in and show for a little bit. What you finna do? Wash some dishes?
No, I'm about to sit up here and get on the computer, and as you're talking, I'm cleaning.
Bet.
I'm not washing no dishes. I don't like dishes. If I could, I would throw all those little motherfuckers away.
Uh, no, I feel you
I need a maid.
though. But we all wish we could have one of those, don't we?
The rich people have it, so why can't we?
True. All right, y'all. Let's go. Let me go ahead and play this jump for y'all real quick. Where we at?
Elevate knowledge, truth, seek you. Don't follow the paths already traveled when that road doesn't feel right. Don't follow the paths already traveled when that road doesn't feel right. Sometimes the way isn't forged and it takes trekking through the night. To gain refined and unique sight. Know your truth, because no one else can for you. They can only impose. Know your role in this now, in this now. That you have power, you have right. Hell, you have sight. Use it. We're here, we're free. Be yourself. You know what I mean? Elevate.
All of our life has been you shouldn't. You shouldn't dress like that. You shouldn't move like that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't think like that. You shouldn't feel like that. You shouldn't. I can count on one hand how many times I've been told to keep dressing like that, keep moving like that, keep saying that, keep thinking like that, keep feeling like that. Society's perspective on how a person should be is just that, a damn perspective. If what I say, do, and dress ain't hurting me or you, I'm gonna keep doing my damn thing. Because what y'all think someone should be is solely on you. It's not and never again will be placed on me to move, feel, think, and dress according to what anyone else thinks. I live for me, I dress for me, I think for me, and I am my own necessity. I am enough for me. I will not conform to society's bullshit way of thinking. If it was up to society, everyone would be one and the same. The kicker is, God created us all differently, and that speaks max value. Kick rocks with your perspective of who, what, and how someone else. We are here, we are free, and we are safe to do whatever makes us feel great. Watch us smack society in the face with everything they
From
is.
the gate, no debates. Stay on your line. Mind the lane. Everyone will question what you're doing. Others will seek to isolate. Don't let it get to you. Keep up the faith. You got this. Go be great. Stay true to who you are. Stay focused. Everyone will question what you're doing. Others will seek to isolate. Circumstantial saying. Don't let it get to you. Keep up the faith. You got this. Go be great. Stay true to who you are. Elevate.
Watch us smack society in the face with everything they is.
All right, I just wanted to play something real quick for y'all.
Who was the young lady in the background? That's slick.
That's my cousin.
Oh,
She's also on a couple of my other songs. She's on my Thin Veil EP and the one joint, Reflections of Reflections, where we're like freestyling. Spoken word, that's her.
okay.
Yeah.
If everybody have not heard John Till, y'all need to go ahead and listen to his shit. I'm just saying. It's very positive. It's for kids friendly. Maybe a couple of songs on there that might have a little few cuss words, but at least it's kid friendly. And I do have my daughter listen.
Yes. It's definitely almost always kid friendly, like about a good 95% kid friendly.
That's what's up. That's what we need. So need more positive music out here that's not talking about killing each other.
Right. Oh no, I don't talk about killing at all.
Period.
At all. Period. There's no killing. There's always rebirth.
Well, people need to go ahead and listen to it. We need more positive things out here because there's just too much shit going on. I'm just saying.
No, but you spitting facts though. I want to go ahead and get into this on another note because I'm sure you wanted to talk about this and watch this along with me because you probably didn't watch the whole thing. I did sit and watch the whole thing, and to be honest, I know this story. I know this story with Zebedios, but his sexy ass. But also like my own personal stories with being in this movement and being involved. It's funny that this happened to be a white dude, but don't let that shit fool you. Informants can be black too. Let's talk about Fred Hampton for a second. And the informant that was like a close friend of his that whoop put him on to the feds. And you know what happened. You should know what happened to Fred Hampton. If you don't, we will be getting into that later on this month. But this is a scenario that happens time and time again in many different movements all across the country and the world when it comes to infiltration. The FBI is no stranger to these kinds of scenarios. So this episode is via Democracy Now! On YouTube, titled COINTELPRO 2.0, How the FBI Infiltrated BLM Protests After Police Murder of George Floyd. So let me go ahead and get into this video for y'all so y'all can check it out because it's
just protests after the police killing of George Floyd in 2020. A new podcast out today called Alphabet Boys documents how the FBI paid an informant at least $20,000 to infiltrate and spy on activist groups in Denver, Colorado. The informant also encouraged activists to purchase guns and commit violence. This is the trailer to Alphabet.
I'm sorry, but that's you a sellout. $20,000. That's it. You can't live the rest of your life out on $20,000. You ruined people's lives for $20,000. Hope it was worth it.
Me too. I wish I had that money right about now.
True.
The summer of 2020. Millions protested for racial justice across the country, with some of these protests turning violent. That summer, it felt like history in the making. Big changes were coming. And then, the protests just stopped.
Yep.
There were these rumors that government agents had infiltrated the movement, pushing it toward collapse. It sounded paranoid, right? But you know what?
Okay, it is August 28th, 2020 at approximately 4:02 p.m.
It wasn't. I'm Trevor Aronson, and I'm a journalist covering federal law enforcement, the Alphabet agencies.
Because the FBI, sometimes you gotta grab the little guy to go after the big guy.
This is Alphabet Boys, a new series from Western Sound and iHeart Podcasts. Each season, we'll take you deep inside an undercover investigation. In season 1, we're headed to Denver.
UC 7775 in Denver, Colorado. Today is August 25th.
Share this stream, y'all, because this is shit y'all should know about. Share this stream out.
A mysterious man rolls into town. He's wearing military fatigues, and he has a cigar dangling from his lips. The car he drives is unmistakable, a silver hearse.
He was very convincing, but he did explain, he was before this BLM movement, and inside his hearse was like a lot of guns.
Was this the guy the movement needed to take things to the next level?
At the end of the day, you come to me, I got something for you. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Or did he have a secret agenda?
He was just waiting for me to set the date, the time, the meeting spot, and then for sure he was trying to get it to happen.
He's a bad guy. Bad guys attract bad guys. And I feel like he's going to keep doing this forever.
They want to cover up the fact that local, state, and federal law enforcement caused violence here.
the trailer to the new podcast, Alphabet Boys, out today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. The podcast centers on an FBI informant named Mickey Windecker, a convicted felon who once fought, he said, with the Kurdish Peshmerga. This clip from Alphabet Boys begins with a Denver racial justice activist named Zebedias Hall, who will be joining us talking about Mickey Windecker.
I didn't know much about him, but he drove a hearse. And inside his hearse was like a lot of guns, you know, like AR-15s and all other kind of. I never held one of those before in my life. Man, I held it. I was like, oh, shit. I'm pro-gun and everything, but I never held anything like that. Yeah, it was just this badass dude, you know, talking about he worked in the foreign military. He was for the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, it just seemed interesting, you know.
In August 2020, with millions of Americans protesting across the country, activist Zeb Hall invites a guy he's met at one of the demonstrations to his
There's the
apartment in
link
Denver
in the
to talk
comments
about
for y'all
plans
for an
the
article concerning this topic too.
Is like, just happen, it has to happen. But it's like you said. I mean, how straight do you expect it? Would you want it to go?
An excerpt from the podcast Alphabet Boys. The FBI informant, Mickey Windecker, played a key role in organizing the protests in Denver. He would also go on to give the activist Zebedias Hall $1,500 to buy a gun for him, which led to Zeb Hall being arrested for transferring a firearm to a felon. Some of the FBI's actions have been compared to the agency's covert COINTELPRO program, that's counterintelligence program, which targeted civil rights groups and other activist movements in the 1960s and 70s. In a moment, Zebedias Hall will join us from Denver. We'll also be joined by former FBI agent Mike German, who now works at the Brennan Center. But first, let's turn to Trevor Aronson, who created the Alphabet Boys podcast. Trevor's an award-winning investigative journalist, contributing writer for The Intercept. He's author of the book, The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terrorism. I mean, this is an astounding podcast series, Trevor. You've got the undercover recordings of, for example, the Black activist Ned speaking to this man, Mickey Windecker, who would travel around in a silver hearse. First, if you can tell us where you got these recordings, if you can.
Now, you bring up Chaz. Okay. Yes, I get what you're saying. However, let's keep our eyes on the whole bigger picture here. Because how a black man wouldn't be able to infiltrate and get all this kind of information. I'm glad that a white man was actually hit to the game and was doing this, because no black journalist would be able to cover this kind of story in this day and age. I'm sorry, they wouldn't be able to get the kind of information that this white man, who could, let's face it, could infiltrate as a racist to get the kind of information that he needed to get. Who knows the kind of stuff and stuff that he had to probably pull just to be able to get, just for us to be able to get this kind of information. Also, think about the different people that in the past have been able to, it wasn't always black people, it wasn't always other black and brown people that let us know that COINTELPRO existed. It was other people within, deep within, that helped us and were able to corroborate stories and things like that. So I am glad that it is a white man, but it does also speak volumes as to people of color's mobility in this movement, and as to like what we can and can't do without extra repercussions that we really don't necessarily want to be dealing with. You know what I'm saying?
But this, lay out the story for us.
Sure, I can't talk about
I hate when it does that.
Sourcing for the recordings or the records, but what I can say is that what's significant about this show is that it's the first behind-the-scenes look at how the FBI infiltrated and investigated racial justice groups and the racial justice movement during the summer of 2020, which for 2 years now has always been an open question, which is how did the FBI respond to the racial justice movement?
Oh, also, Chaz, this man originally this is what he does, but it not geared towards Black Lives Matter infiltrations. He usually covers infiltrations geared towards Muslims and like Iraqi war and Afghanistan and those kind of situations are the stories he generally covers. I forget how they said he did come across this. They might speak on it though.
Given the context that the FBI had previously designated Black political activists as so-called Black identity extremists or anti-government extremists. And what's significant about this is that the FBI in Denver, according to internal FBI recordings or internal FBI reports and undercover recordings, hired a convicted felon with a history of sexual assault and menacing with a weapon to infiltrate these groups while being paid thousands of dollars. And the shades of COINTELPRO that are part of this rise from the fact that Mickey Windecker, the informant, ended up becoming a leader in the protest movement, just as we saw informants in the 1960s and 1970s during COINTELPRO become leaders in those movements, and then accuse other leaders, or the real leaders of these groups, of being informants, a practice called snitch jacketing that was used to devastating effect against Black political groups in the 1960s. And that's exactly what happened in Denver. Mickey became a leader of the racial justice movement there, accused real leaders of being informants when they were not. And then once he was in a position of leadership, attempted to entrap local activists in crimes, in some cases, violent crimes.
I literally watched this happen personally. And so this story I take to heart. It resonates with me. And right now, I'm wondering how many other people does this story resonate? How many other people that were doing things were thrown out on the outs or called this, that, and the third. And here it comes out that someone else was, the actual informant. This is a story. It's out there playbook that they've been doing this for decades now. And this is nothing new. And this specific story is nothing new, but we need to pay attention, y'all. Like, no one's out the dark. 2020 was 3 years ago at this point, but this shit, there's still repercussions of this going on till this day. People are still facing charges and haven't even gotten sentenced yet. Thank goodness, because a lot of these people, most of these people are innocent. However, we still are not out the dark, and we've got a long way to go as far as bringing awareness to the kinds of things that are going on when it comes to this shit.
In fact, Mickey and the FBI went so far as to try to stitch together a supposed plot to assassinate Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser, which ultimately went nowhere, but shows you the scale that the FBI had in trying to manufacture a plot.
Exactly, Chaz.
Activists could get behind that would then reveal these activists as being violent. And I think it's important to understand the context in which this happened. In 2020, the Trump administration at the time was really beating the drum on this idea that Antifa and Black Lives Matter activists were potentially violent. This was a narrative that was being reinforced and echoed by right-wing media at the time. And what you're seeing in these undercover recordings is the FBI essentially trying to make that possible and happen. Ultimately, that does not happen. Obviously, there was no assassination plot or attempt against Phil Weiser, the Colorado Attorney General. But the FBI, using this paid informant, went to extreme lengths to try to make that happen.
Well, Trevor, as you mentioned, this was a tactic used often during COINTELPRO in the 60s and the 70s, but it's become standard practice for the FBI and law enforcement. And I think back to during the Seattle World Trade Organization protests, there were undercover agents then trying to spur extreme action among the protesters. During the period after the 9/11 attacks, there were undercover FBI agents who tried to infiltrate Muslim groups around the country and trying to get them to participate in.
And they ruined lives, whole families they've ruined for decades, and it's sad.
In violent acts. So this has been a regular feature of the FBI. Have you been able to see whether they were doing this to the same extent among the right-wing groups that were actually involved in major terrorist attacks across the country?
Absolutely. So this is a tactic that became commonplace in the post 9/11 era, which was that the FBI used undercover agents or informants to, in the case of counterterrorism investigations, go into Muslim communities, find someone who might be interested in violence, and make everything possible, providing the means, the opportunity, and in most cases, the bomb or the weapon that ultimately would be used, then arrest that person and announce to the public a terrorism plot foiled. And so what's significant here is that we're seeing a lot of the powers and tactics used against would-be terrorists or supposed terrorists in the post-9/11 era being applied against political activists in Denver in the summer of 2020. And the reason that is significant is that the internal FBI records show in the case in Denver that the FBI launched its investigation based on nothing more than First Amendment protected activities, which were essentially things that Zebediah Hall and other activists had said, which in some cases were quite incendiary, but ultimately were First Amendment protected activities. And yet they launched this investigation based solely on that, without any reason to believe that any of these activists were moving toward a plot of violence or anything of the like. And as for the question of whether this happens on the right, it does. You know, obviously there have been other plots that have targeted right-wing activists. The most well-known right now is the plot that targeted a group of men in Michigan in a supposed plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And so I think what's important about this story now is that we are entering this phase when Jim Jordan and the Congress are about to launch this committee that is specifically looking to establish this narrative that the FBI is solely focused on this type of tactic against right-wing groups and right-wing political activists, when that isn't true. What ultimately is true is that the FBI has an enormous amount of power that deserves a lot more oversight than it currently receives. And all sorts of groups from left to right are subjected to this kind of activity by the FBI. And so this narrative that the right wing is attempting to establish that the FBI is prejudiced against right-wing groups and we're only seeing this activity among right-wing groups, there is evidence of that. And no doubt Jim Jordan will find it. But the truth is that this is far more extensive. It involves many groups. And in most cases, I would argue, if you look at the history of prosecutions in the post 9/11 era, these types of tactics are used far more against left-wing activists and left-wing political groups than they are against right-wing groups.
Even though the intelligence committees have found that it is domestic terrorism, far right-wing, that is the greatest threat to the United States right now. And you're talking about the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, chaired by Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. That's meeting on Thursday. But let's turn to a video.
Hold on now. Let's reiterate what's being talked about here real quick. Because even though the FBI has told all of us, the country, the Department of Homeland Security made a public statement saying that anyone who is not cisgender, white, straight, and male, and if you're all those things and you're poor too, even that if you're not any of those things, you're fine. But if you are any of those things, if you are not any of those things, then you are subject to some kind of harm being done against you in the form of terrorism, domestic terrorism via cisgender, heterosexual, straight, prejudiced, racist, white, misogynistic men. Okay? So the FBI knows this, yet they are making breeding and curating domestic terrorists that are also informants and infiltrating them into predominantly leftist organizations, BLM, black and white groups that are here for social justice and to defend ourselves against our biggest domestic terrorist threat. The FBI knows this, yet they are sitting here systemically on their side. What is that saying about the FBI? What is that saying about this country? What is that saying about how they view most of America? I just want that to sink in for a second.
video capturing when FBI informant Mickey Windecker met with his FBI handlers. By the way, he's denying he's an FBI informant. Met with his FBI handlers before he met with the Denver activist Zeb Hall.
It is August 28th, 2020 at approximately 4:02 p.m. Special Agent Scott Dahlstrom with Special Agent Byron Mitchell, CHS, for meet with Zebediah Hall.
Thank you. You can hear this stuff out of my front pocket, right?
Yeah.
Okay. See how nice and slender they are? Video look good?
Yep.
Yeah. Look handsome?
Mm-hmm.
Not as handsome as that kid.
So that's Mickey Windecker talking to his handlers, going out to meet the guest we're joined by right now, Zebediah Hall, or Zeb Hall, a Denver activist targeted by the FBI, featured in the Alphabet Boys podcast, joining us from Denver. I mean, Zeb, this is such an amazing story, because you'd think if the FBI wanted to infiltrate a group like a Black Lives Matter group, they wouldn't have someone who just appears so different in every way. This white guy who is blatantly driving the silver hearse filled with automatic weapons. I mean, it is amazing. So talk about how you met up with him, your involvement in BLM, Black Lives Matter, and why you came to believe that he was a fellow traveler, if you will.
I first met, well, thanks for having me. I first met Mickey at one of the earlier protests, either it had been early July or late June. He was around a lot of folks, taking information, phone numbers and whatnot. It was quite odd. We were all confused. We didn't know what to expect. And it was very terrifying down the line when we found out more about him. It's a very dangerous history this gentleman had. And I think it's very terrifying, especially the fact that, it was sent to our BLM movement in the hopes of tarnishing it.
And Zeb Hall, what led you to begin to think that he might not be on the up and up? And what were some of the examples of ways he tried to get people to do things they normally would not do?
It's towards the, I would probably say, towards, there was a march from the headquarters of the police department, and, people were just starting to get, more, how would I say, rowdy than usual. And, he's yelling at people, making orders and whatnot. And sometime down the line, it was really evident when the Colorado Springs Antifa released an article explaining more about this gentleman. It was very heinous and scary.
So until that article came out, you had no suspicion that he might be an agent provocateur or undercover informant?
It was very confusing. It was so much going on that summer. We didn't know what to expect, but we never would have thought that the FBI would have sent a gentleman like that to our movement. Everything's really confusing. It's so hard to put things together looking back now. But it's, I will say at the end of the day that, I think most of the things that happened, either it be violent or confusion, wouldn't have happened without the FBI and their informant, Michael Windecker.
Let's go to hear the FBI informant, Mickey Windecker, in a recording he made after he was accused of being an informant. He spoke in front of a flag for the Kurdistan Workers' Party and an AR-15 style assault rifle. That was his background.
So there's a group or a individual that's claiming that they are Antifa Colorado Springs. And in fact, that I believe that they are actually not Antifa Colorado Springs, because I believe they are actually a cop. This individual has posted stuff discrediting other individuals that are fighting against the fascists in Denver, Colorado, such as Cutting the Plastic and other communist groups and other individuals. I, for one, am not amused or pleased about the that's going on.
So that's Mickey Windecker accusing Antifa of being the informants. Zeb Hall, talk about how you were entrapped then, how he gave you money to buy a gun for him. and what happened next?
Yeah, I'll start off saying, I was scared, but, I've got to own the fact that I purchased the firearm. It was just quite odd. And, then the way in which, he explained it to me, I just didn't understand. I never purchased a gun before, and I get this gun for this gentleman. And, shortly after, the information comes out about his criminal history and who he is. And, I'm terrified at this point. And come around January, an article comes out, with Mr. Shelby, who will be mentioned later on. And at that point, I was absolutely terrified. It's, I was just afraid, I own what I did. And, I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but, here we are. It was just a terrifying experience. We were all afraid.
I'd like to bring in former FBI Special Agent Mike German, now a fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University Law School. He's written a book titled Disrupt, Discredit, and Divide, How the New FBI Damages Democracy. Mike German, talk to us about these efforts by the FBI to especially target movements, social movements on the left.
Thanks for having me. Trevor has spent a large part of his career covering this change in the FBI's undercover tactic, where they have aggressively used informant-driven operations targeting mostly Muslim Americans in terrorism investigations with a tactic that wasn't designed to uncover criminal activity that was ongoing, but rather to manufacture criminal activity, to create a case where no case had existed before. And what I think is really critical about the reporting on Alphabet Boys is that in many of those cases, Trevor had to rely on court documents or Freedom of Information Act records and statements of the defendants. And defenders of these tactics at the FBI and elsewhere would often say, well, the FBI probably had some other kind of information that justified the use of these tactics that couldn't be released in court or discussed openly. Where here, Trevor has the entire investigative file. And we can see that the FBI here chose somebody with a serious criminal record to infiltrate a social movement and target people who were much less involved in any criminal activity and actually to stoke violence at these protests. And that's a tactic that, as discussed, is straight out of the COINTELPRO playbook, where the tactics were meant to disrupt and divide the social movements rather than to uncover serious crime.
Zeb, you were sentenced to 3 years probation. I'm wondering, with the police killing of Tyre Nichols, and also you were dealing not only with George Floyd, but in Aurora, Colorado at the time, the horrific police killing of Elijah McClain, with a massive crackdown on protesters after that, as they would engage in violent vigils, because he played violins for cats and dogs at the local shelter injected with this massive dose of ketamine. Has this changed your approach to the world? Are you afraid to be an activist?
No, I'm more committed. It was a terrifying experience, but I know what I signed up for. This is a lifelong thing. Even though it does affect us as Black people more, I do understand this is a situation that all people in America have to deal with. No, I'm more committed than I was before. This is going to be a lifelong thing.
And Trevor Aronson, in the last 30 seconds we have, what you want people to take away from this podcast series dropping today, the Alphabet Boys.
So I think it's important to recognize that not only did Mickey Windecker try to set up activists like Zeb in specific crimes, but that he played a large role in turning what were otherwise demonstrations and protests into what became full-out assaults on police stations in Denver. Some of the most violent incidents that we saw in Denver that summer had Mickey's fingerprints all over them. He was hyping them up. He was encouraging people to attend. He was encouraging people to become more and more violent. And so, at least in Denver, we have evidence that a government agent was behind many of these protests that ultimately turned violent.
Well, this is a truly astounding podcast series. Trevor Aronson, host of the new Alphabet Boys podcast, award-winning investigative journalist, contributing writer for The Intercept. Zebediah Hall, thanks so much for joining us from Denver, an activist targeted by the FBI, featured in the podcast, and Mike German for joining us as well, former FBI agent, now a fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice.
All right, and here is the news article for it. Yo, Ghost from Akron, what's your viewpoint on this this here situation?
Oh my goodness. I wasn't out there in 2020, y'all, but my thoughts are now, because of the fact here in Akron, we've seen so many activists, advocates, however you want to label us, get beaten by APD. And I wonder if the FBI here had a part of it. It makes me question a lot of things, because a lot of our activists are still going through court as we speak.
Yep.
Some charges have been dropped and others has not yet. They're still facing trial. They're going through trial. But we think Mr. Blake, who is 60 or a little over 60 years old, get beaten by the police here. And that's what made me really step out and put myself as well as my children at a risk to go out here and march with everyone else, because that is like a dad to all of us who are young and still learning about this. You know, Mr. Harris, Michael Harris, activist pressure, was beaten. We seen the cop handcuff him and beat him and hit him multiple times in his face. And they're still facing the charges. It's like, okay, who can we trust to protect us? That's why we say our streets. That's why we say our seats. We own them seats. We're paying them. Why are we keep on allowing them to do this to us?
Because we're distracted, we're disbanded, we're disconnected, and we're in a society of individualism, and they prey upon that. Chaz spoke on following the money, which I totally agree. Because if you follow money, you'll get led to the corporations, and you'll get led to the people that are funding and orchestrating these side projects. And he said, "Oh, they definitely have their hands everywhere. Look at 990 forms for the nonprofits."
Ooh, snap for me, y'all. That's deep. Triple times. Triple times, because wow. And that's the thing with us African American, Black American, some of our Caucasians that's in for this movement. This is my question to everyone who's listening and watching. When we have to face the higher power on the day of judgment, when we cannot take any type of money into our graveyard, then what? Money comes and goes, as we all know. But at the end of the day, what are you guys going to do when you're dead? What you gonna do then? We still fighting for justice. God is going to judge us all. And if there is a heaven and there is a hell, which one do you want to choose? It's my whole question to everyone right about now, because I'm choosing heaven. Fuck the money. Fuck that money. I want to go to heaven because I can get 10 times billions on God when I go face him and I have to answer to some of my sins and I ask him for forgiveness. I'd rather choose heaven than hell.
I get your logic. I feel you. I wanted to end out real quick. Hold on. Because back to this informant thing, because the dude on the screen, no, the dude on the screen here, this was the person who, okay, so let me just read this real quick, all right? Because this guy, Trey Quinn, is one of the organizers of Denver's racial justice demonstrations. He spoke out a lot. He was one of the biggest leaders, and Mickey Windecker and the FBI targeted him as part of the undercover probe. So basically, Trey had kind of got like inklings of Windecker, so he tested him, and I think he asked them like about burning down a neighborhood, and Windecker was like really, really gung ho for it, and already setting up plans to make moves to make that happen. And that's when this dude Trey was like, all right, I got my answer right there. This dude's definitely an informant. Let me back away and let me start like alerting other people. But as he was trying to do that, Windecker went out ahead of him and told everybody in the community that Trey was the informant instead. So then everybody just blackballed Trey and stopped talking to him. And this happens. I've seen it happen. It happens. And guess what? Trey got put on the outs, and the actual informant, aka Mickey, continued to even amp up on the violence and conspiring to get protesters and activists in trouble with the law.
And that's still going on as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going on as of right now. And a lot of our people who thinks that, the police is okay and they all goody good tissues needs to wake the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our songs that talks about fuck the police and names of the CNA and FBI, better listen, because they've been through it for some typical reason. It's the reason why they made that music.
Yep.
They've been through it. Some of us have not been through it. I'm old school, but I think a lot and I hear a lot. And it's just time to step up and take over our seats that we're paying the government for. They getting paid off of our money. We ain't getting paid, they are.
Talk about it.
If I could sit up there and get paid for the things that I do for the people, for my children, I'd be at home 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days out the year.
Facts.
But I can't do that because I got a whole entire family and I still got bills to be able to make. If I could just sit at home, do what I do, like how they're doing, and showboat is what I want to call it, I would do it.
That is the way of the world. That's what they know. That's what they count on. And we have to know that. We have to understand that and do something about that. We don't. We use that as an excuse. It's not.
Yeah.
It's the card that we're dealt. It's embedded in. It's a given.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
People are too scared. That's the thing about it.
Totally.
They're too scared.
They're scared until it happens to them.
Yep.
When they literally, personally have nothing left to lose.
I see a lot of our young men being victimized, taking plea deals for something that they did not do because of the fact that that statement of snitches do get stitches, that's a true statement, y'all.
Right.
These kids ain't gonna talk. I'm sorry to say, but they're not. These babies are not going to talk because whether they get got out here in the streets, they will definitely get got in prison or jail. And that's where the system fails us as Black men and women, as well as the poor.
Right.
If you ain't rich and got that money to pay, you're about to go lose your whole entire life for somebody else. And them people don't look out for them. The families end up sending money on the bill, making sure that they got food boxes. That food is shitty out there, and they're dying.
I was gonna say that food is making you slowly die. On top of all the shit that they don't have the proper amenities and the illnesses that go around. It's yeah.
I'm just gonna say this one more time, maybe a couple of more times until it sinks in. I am not a peaceful mother. If anything, God forbid, ever happens to my family, I am not going to ask for peace. If they force me to ask for peace, everybody who knows me knows I don't want no more peace. I'm tired. Of being peaceful, but I do it out of respect for the family, as well as that I can't risk on losing my children for somebody else's. But trust me and believe me, I'm speaking upon it. It's hard being peaceful. I'm tired, but I'm not gonna be a peaceful ass mother. Y'all can kiss my motherfucking ass on that one.
Facts.
As well as, that even goes if anything, God forbid, happens to my husband. No, he's the breadwinner of my family. He's the one that keeps me on my toes.
Right.
So here, y'all know what to do. I don't gotta say it. And I don't give a fuck about the money or anything like that. They could pay me $1 trillion million or whatnot. Money is not going to bring my family back, period, point blank. So they can shove that money up their asses and we can shit up. End of story.
I got some ideas rolling around in my head. Let's wrap this up, get off of here. I got some ideas I want to spit. All right, y'all. Yo, Ghost from Akron, thank you for tuning in and vibing with me today on this episode about COINTEL 2.0, discussion about the FBI, BLM, and informants. You can catch that episode via Democracy Now! On YouTube. And I put the links to the article as well in the comment section via Facebook and YouTube if you're watching on those platforms. I hope that you have a blessed, bountiful, and beautiful day.
Oh, thank you for having me once again, Johnson.
You already know what it is.
All right, y'all. I love y'all. Peace out.
Be well.